Oh, good morning, Prof. Chris. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. After that slight little technical hitch, which always makes me really nervous when I do things like this, but now we've fixed it, I'm okay.
Good. Great. I'm going to start. First, I would like to greet everyone. Hello, good morning. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Dr. Aisha Al-Mutawa. I work for Dubai Ambulance. I'm a candidate and innovation professional program, and I'm your host for today. Our session is titled Best Practices in Innovation Culture. Before I introduce our esteemed guest, let me take you through the plan of the day. So we have 2 minutes with introduction, then 45 minutes with Professor Chris, and 15 minutes Q&A session. Now, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Prof. Chris Beswick, who has over a decade of experience as a successful entrepreneur in consulting industry. He is recognized globally as a thought leader on innovation strategy, leadership, and culture, and a pioneer in the field of measuring innovation maturity, and co-author of Building a Culture of Innovation, which is an Amazon bestseller and voted as one of CMI's top books on innovation and management gold in 2017. He is co-founder of innovation thought leadership platform known as the Future Shapers, a board advisor at Innovation CoLab and the Global Innovation Institute, and an executive faculty member at several global business schools, including Cranfield School of Management and Henley's Business School. Prof is also the co-founder of a boutique innovation advisory firm called Outcome, where he helped some of the world's most ambitious CEOs, visionary leaders, and Fortune 500 companies and government to solve the most complex innovation challenges and develop game-changing innovation capabilities and build a culture of innovation. So please join me to welcome Prof. Chris Beswick. First, let me I noticed from his profile a very interesting statement. I think, Prof, you were giving a TED talk or something, where you stated at the back why strategy, leadership, and culture should eat breakfast together. If you allow me to add, every day, please.
Yes.
And just, I would like to throw you, let's say, teasers, perhaps you addressed during your presentation. Innovation culture, is there a secret recipe? Is it one size fits all? Who's responsible for driving culture? We hear leadership, leadership, leadership. Maybe you have a different perspective.
Yeah.
And how to sustain a positive innovation ecosystem. The rest will follow hopefully from the audience, and the floor is all yours.
Perfect. Let me answer the first one. There is no one size fits all for innovation culture, and everything I'm going to talk about today hopefully will unpack that a little more. So many thanks for the introduction. That was really nice. Right, let me share my screen. Here we go. So please let me know if you can see this. My machine's a little slow this morning, so here we go. Right. Can we all see that? Yeah? Perfect. So welcome everyone. That was a fantastic introduction. I now have to do that justice, which will be a hard job. It was a superb introduction. As you've just heard, my name is Chris Beswick, and I have been helping organizations and leadership teams build a culture of innovation, or build innovation into the everyday activity of organizations. So make it cultural for the past decade. Before that, I worked in the design consulting industry. So a lot of what you're going to hear from me today, you'll hear has design roots and design background. And as we know, innovation predominantly today centers on the use of design and design thinking and creativity, etc. Interestingly, some of you on today's session may be from RTA, and I actually worked with RTA probably about 10 years ago now, on very early conversations around innovation culture. So maybe we can revisit that with some people on the call later. So here's the book that I wrote, and what I'm going to share with you today are some of the ideas and the thoughts and the empirical evidence that I have around how innovation works inside an organization, how important culture is, but really how important leadership is. And I'm going to share some of the things that we wrote about in the book, but I'm also going to share lots of things that have happened since writing the book, because just like innovation, our thinking evolves and our evidence evolves and our experience evolves around how to build how to drive innovation, build culture, engage people, lead people, and our thinking evolves as society and the world evolves as well. So what I'm going to share are best practices, but some of the things that I actually call mission critical. So the mission critical things that a culture of innovation really needs. And the first thing to recognize is it's slightly inconvenient, but despite all of the effort that goes into innovation around the world, despite all the money, despite the budget, despite all of the organizations around the world trying to innovate, all of the data still suggests that very, very few leaders are extremely satisfied. Some may be okay, some may be satisfied, but there are very few that are extremely satisfied with their organization's ability to innovate. And what we need to do here, and what I'd like to encourage you all to do today, is to think about and really deeply internalize the things that I'm going to share with you to figure out how you can be extremely satisfied with your ability to innovate. So we have a question, and I believe this is set up. And what I'd like you all to do is to use the system to answer this question. And the question is, what do you think are the biggest barriers to building a culture of innovation? So choose the answers that you choose the one that you think is the biggest barrier, and then if you want, choose other ones that maybe rank slightly lower. So, is innovation a real core value in the organization? We have many organizations around the world where innovation is talked about and innovation is in annual reports, and innovation might feature in values, but is it a real core value that's lived and breathed every day? The second thing I'd like you to consider is, do the leaders in your organization genuinely own the whole innovation agenda? Is innovation behavior modeled on a day-to-day basis? Is innovation and the things that you need in order to innovate baked into your day-to-day activity? Is it safe for you as an individual or a team to share ideas, to challenge the status quo, and to think differently? So is psychological safety a core component of how you work on a daily basis? And then the final thing to consider is the strategy around innovation absolutely crystal clear? So I'd encourage you, use the system, and let's see what answers we get back when all the data's come in. So if we could set that going, that would be brilliant.
Excuse me, Chris, can you see
Yes.
the results on the system?
No, I can't.
Okay, so we have the highest is the leadership ownership of innovation is 21%.
So leadership ownership, 21%. Okay.
Yes, and the second comes not baked into the day-to-day.
Okay.
The third comes innovation isn't a core value.
Yeah.
The fourth comes modeling of innovation behavior.
Okay.
And
That'll be fine actually.
yes,
Yeah, that'll be perfect. Thank you very much. Okay,
and
we
we have the
can.
unclear
Go on.
strategy as well.
Okay, so that's
Thank
done.
you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. We can move forward now. Okay. So the results are in. Am I back online? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Chris.
Yes,
Chris,
perfect. Thank you very much. So the results are in, and what I wanted to do with this exercise was just see how you as an organization respond to these questions, given the empirical evidence and the experience I have from asking similar questions around the world. And also, my team look at all of the reports from every consultancy, all of the big companies on an annual basis, and we constantly model all the data to make sure we keep up with the current challenges that corporates face. And the answer that you've returned as the biggest challenge, the biggest barrier to innovation and building a culture innovation is leadership. And the second one that you've come back, the data that you've provided from your answers, then suggests that innovation isn't baked into the day-to-day. So innovation isn't part of organizational culture. It's not part of what you do on a day-to-day basis. And I'll talk about those two in a minute, but the third one is then core value and then behaviors and then strategy. All of the data that I have, the empirical evidence combined with all the research we do and the evidence we have from the clients that we work with around the world, including governments like yours, is leadership and sponsorship, i.e. sponsorship of innovation and leadership of innovation, is the number one biggest barrier to innovation. And the challenge with that is leadership, ownership, and leadership in general is the most important thing when we're trying to build a culture of innovation. My evidence also suggests that vision, why we need innovation, so strategy, and then culture, i.e. day-to-day empowerment and enabling people to innovate and enabling collaboration being baked into the day-to-day, that's the third most important or the third biggest barrier. So the answers we've got from you really mirror all of the evidence and my experience about what holds innovation back in organizations. So we're going to focus on those today. We're going to focus on three things. We're going to focus on leadership, strategy, and culture, and I'll explain why in a moment. Many of you will have heard Peter Drucker, the management guru's old quote, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And I think Drucker was right pre-Lehman Brothers, so before 2008, before the financial crash. What I think is really important, and all the evidence I have and all of the work we do with organizations like yourself shows me that best practice isn't now just about culture. And this was what was introduced at the start. And I absolutely agree that. So this is my perspective and my answer to Drucker. What we now have to do, if we really want to shape the future, we have to, just like we do with innovation, we have to build a system. We have to combine different elements. One element is not good enough anymore. Culture alone won't help us shape the future. Culture binds us all together and it's important, but without clear leadership driving us forward every day, and without clear direction, without that strategy, without that North Star that's clear across the whole organization, it's impossible to shape the future. And that strategy and that culture is a leadership responsibility. So for me, strategy, leadership and culture need to eat breakfast, but exactly as you heard at the start, I should add every day. Strategy, leadership and culture need to eat breakfast every day. Here's the system that I'm talking about. This is the best practice that I want to share with you. What we know from every organization we've worked with, and the really high performing innovation led organizations, they do one thing very, very well. They build a system for innovation, just like we have a system in the way that our organization operates in its traditional form. Innovation needs to be looked at as a system. We need to understand the cause and effect of different components of that system. And we need to understand how important leadership is in driving all of those components of that system and binding them together. We need absolutely clear strategy about why innovation is important, how we're going to shape the future, and what we're going to do about it. What are the mechanisms by which we're going to do, and what direction will we take? And everyone in the organization needs to be clear about that. Innovation then needs really, really clear processes. And as you've just heard, one of the barriers baked into the day-to-day. Processes need to be baked into the way that you work on a daily basis, whether that's canvases, tools, methodologies, frameworks, whether it's design thinking, whether it's outcome-driven innovation, whether it's lean, agile, whatever the processes and tools are that you have decided are your way of driving innovation, they have to be baked into the day-to-day activities of your organization. And the third thing is governance. And when I talk about governance, I mean the management of innovation on a day-to-day basis. The decisions by which investments are made in terms of what ideas to back and what ideas to not back, how much to back ideas, what teams to put around ideas, how we then measure innovation. So my business partner is a guy called Dan Toma, who some of you may know as one of the authors of The Corporate Startup, and we've now just launched the new book, Innovation Accounting. Innovation accounting is the gold standard for governance and measuring innovation and innovation accounting inside organizations. That has to be part of your day-to-day. And then the other two things which I really want to focus on today is culture and how we embed all of this into culture so that we build an organization and we build an environment that is capable of driving innovation on a day-to-day basis. And the thing that underpins all that together is absolutely brilliant leadership. Not traditional generic leadership that we knew from 10, 20, 30 years ago, but leadership specifically capable of driving innovation. It's what I call leading for innovation. And what I want to share with you is my counterintuitive view that leadership actually is more crucial in the middle of an organization than it is at the top. And I'll share why with you shortly. The next thing I want to talk to you about, just to set the scene for all this, is that as we've seen over the past few years, turmoil, disruption, upset, devastation, they are now common parts of the way that the world is operating. As we're seeing at the moment, the terrible situation in Europe with Ukraine. What we have to do as leaders is embrace the fact and become comfortable with the fact that there will always be turmoil in some way, shape or form. Our job as leaders is to be able to lead through that uncertainty. Our job as leaders is to build a culture that becomes not resistant to turmoil and to disruption and pandemics and war and things like that, but becomes comfortable in its own abilities that it can navigate through that. And the best performing organizations build that kind of comfort through psychological safety and great leadership, where the innovation capabilities of your organization should give you so much confidence that you can navigate through these situations and in many cases turn them not necessarily to your advantage, but turn them into times of opportunity. One of the challenges with the world we live in now is the problems that we're facing are becoming more complex. They're what we call what the design industry would call wicked problems. And as an entrepreneur or a serial entrepreneur, having run and built several businesses and being the CEO of several organizations, I know that turning wicked problems into opportunities isn't easy, but neither is building sustainable business models around them. But the reality is that's our job as leaders. Best practice leadership is the ability to drive an organization forward that can tackle wicked problems head on. Best practice leadership is about being able to build a culture that can tackle wicked problems head on and turn them into opportunities. That's how we shape the future. If we're tackling problems where we know we're fairly comfortable that we can solve them, or we're running experiments where we already think we know what the outcome of that experiment will be, then we're not really running the right kind of experiments. We're not really tackling the right kind of problems. What we need to do is use innovation as a capability in our culture as leaders to stretch our organization and try to tackle more complex, more challenging, more high value and more important problems. And that for me is the job of leadership. So I want you to deeply internalize the things that I'm going to share on leadership now, because I think we really need my view, and I've worked at multiple business schools around the world as professors, as visiting professors, as adjunct faculty, and I'm still disappointed by the level of leadership development that is still going on in business schools today. I think leadership in general is broken for many organizations around the world. And what I want to encourage you to do is to figure out how you can reshape leadership development for your organization. And that's what I call leading for innovation. It's not about making you as leaders, making you innovators. It's about building your capability to lead your organizations for innovation. And my view on this is this. Problems and circumstances are, like I've said, becoming more complex every day. What worked yesterday won't work today, and it certainly won't work tomorrow. So as organizations, we need to be creative to change and solve those wicked problems. That requires us as leaders, as executives, but also as managers who are also leaders, as key influencers who are also leaders. It requires us to become that innovation leader, able to translate the future and strategy and the day-to-day and purpose into the actions and behaviors that drive innovation-led outcomes. So the first thing I want you to think about is the bits on leadership that I'm going to share. And it's about understanding the reality of what leading in the world we live in today looks and feels like, and what leading for innovation really entails. The first thing I want you to be really clear about is the ambition that you have. And what I've purposely done on these slides is I've given you a key word to focus on. So there's a keyword on every slide, and I want you to, even go away after this and build a word cloud or something like that, and have a conversation about these words with your colleagues and stimulate conversation about these keywords. And the first one is ambition. Innovation for me, and the organizations I've seen around the world that absolutely drive this on a day-to-day basis, they combine innovation with the pursuit of better. They combine it with purpose, and I'm going to talk about purpose in a minute. But innovation for me is about that pursuit of better. It's about the mindset that we can reshape the world, that we can make things better for our people, for our organizations, for society, for the world. And innovation is the vehicle that we use to do that. So the first thing we have to do as leaders is be really clear on our ambition. Where do we want to get to? What do we believe is possible? And how as leaders do we communicate that across our organization? And that communication channel is really important. And the way that we communicate that is really important. What we have to understand is when we have a conversation in the boardroom at leadership level and we talk about certain things, we probably can't have the same conversation as we go down the organization. We have to translate different business things and strategies and philosophies and concepts and frameworks. We have to translate them so that they are understood by everyone in the organization. So think about the level of your ambition and then think about how you can communicate that throughout the organization so that everyone understands it and everyone can align themselves to it. So create that future, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the future. And I know Dubai, more than anywhere, has a much better view on the possibility of the future and the long-term view that shaping the future needs. So I want you to think about that. But here's the important thing. And one of the things I talked about with the team in the preparation for this session is being really clear on building that vision of the future is incredibly important from a leadership perspective. But almost and arguably what's more important is being absolutely clear on the left-hand side of this slide, being absolutely clear on exactly where you are today. In order to shape the future and get there, we have to know what our start point is. Think about the satellite navigation system or the GPS system in your car when you turn on the ignition. It cannot get to the destination that you enter into it if it can't triangulate your current position. It's impossible for it to create an accurate route to get you to where you want to get to. You have to do the same as a leader. You have to be really clear on where you start from and then move forward in and what I call a human-centered and hypothesis-driven way. And what that means is we can build a picture of the future of the world in 2050. But we don't know, as we've seen in the past few years, we can't predict what will happen over the next few years. So building a strategy in the traditional sense, which was we build a strategy for 5 years and tomorrow we're going to start to implement the strategy and we implement it in a linear way and we don't deviate for 5 years because that's what we've agreed on. We now move forward in a hypothesis-driven way and we move forward at the pace by which we can determine the world won't change fundamentally enough to affect our strategy. And if that might be, if our confidence is that the world won't change for the next 6 or 9 months, then that's the step we take forward. And then we review that hypothesis and then we move forward again. We take it in short leaps to make sure that our view of the world or what's happening in the world doesn't derail our strategy. It's a very, very different approach. What I also want you to think about as leaders is your wellness and your mental wellness and your mental well-being. The best organizations in the world are now taking mental health and well-being incredibly seriously. And I can tell you from personal experience as an ex-CEO, I pushed myself because I wanted my organization to be successful and I wanted my team to be successful. And I pushed myself quite a while ago now, about 20 years ago, as a CEO, I pushed myself way too far and I almost burnt out. And the effect mentally and the effects on wellness are really, really important. And as a leader, we all have to be conscious of that for our people, but you must be conscious of that for yourself as a leader. If you've heard the American military term VUCA, which stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, it's very, very easy with everything going on in the world and with the pressure of work and the demands that working and trying to achieve goals takes. It's really easy as a leader to see the world as VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And the effect that that has on your capacity mentally to lead effectively should not be underestimated. So I want you to be really conscious of how you're looking at the world and whether all of these forces and the pressure of work and the effects of global upset and things that are happening affect you as an individual. Internalize it and be really conscious of it, because as a leader, when you have that kind of mindset, what you won't realize is how much it affects your leadership decisions. If you think the world is uncertain and complex and ambiguous, if that's your mindset, you're going to be less willing to take risk. You're going to be less willing to experiment. You're going to be less willing to allow your people to do things differently, because you're going to want to stay on a well-trodden certain path. You're going to want to stay on a safe path. And all of those things are completely counter to how we drive innovation. So think about the mindset that you have as a leader. It must be purpose-driven. It must have ambition, but you also need to make sure that you take care of your own personal well-being and have a positive frame of mind on a day-to-day basis, because that mindset is easily visible to everyone else that you lead, and it affects your decisions. My top tip, and what I coach all the leaders around the world that I work with, is to shift from a negative VUCA mindset to a positive VUCA mindset. And what I mean by that is change VUCA to an innovation-focused mindset, a positive, future-shaping mindset. Change VUCA to be visionary, unbounded, curious, and authentic. And as a leader, if you turn up to work every day with vision, with a mindset that says there are no bounds that can stop us, whatever those boundaries are, we will work around them. We'll creatively solve problems. With a mindset that says, I'm curious about what we can achieve, and I'm curious about how different we can do things. And also a personality that is genuine, that is absolutely authentic. So as a leader, every one of the people that you influence says, I absolutely believe in what my leader says. I know they're sincere. I know they're passionate. And that makes me, as an employee, as someone who is being led by them, that motivates and inspires me, and I want to follow them on that journey. I want to drive innovation with them. That mindset and that approach is incredibly, incredibly important. As I just mentioned, purpose is really important. And I know, and I'm inspired by Dubai in general, not just, you know, you as government, but the whole country and your leaders, because you as not just as an organization, but as a whole nation, are purpose driven, more so than any other organization that I can think of around the world. And what you need to do as leaders is really tap into that purpose and reinforce that purpose on a day-to-day basis. Reinforce the fact that, you know, innovation isn't just about money. It's not just about wealth. It's about shaping the future. It's about making the world a better place, about making Dubai a better place, about making the government serve its people in a much, much better way. Elon Musk famously said, you know, if everything I was doing, and if all of the stuff, and if innovation and all of the things that we do was just about money, you know, if my purpose was just about money, I'd have started another internet business. So think about what really drives you and what purpose means to you as an individual and to you as an organization, and figure out a way as a leader to convey that on a day-to-day basis to your organization. One of the things purpose does from a leadership perspective is it helps us shift, and it's a key component in helping our mindset shift from short-term resilience to long-term value creation, because purpose is something that is long-term and not short-term. The next thing I want you to think about, and this is important for leaders, because I think leaders should not necessarily be creative, but need to understand creativity and how it works. But if you are creative, figure out a way of bringing that creativity to work on a day-to-day basis. Figure out a way of using what inspires you and what makes you creative outside work, and bring that into work, bring that passion into what you do on a day-to-day basis. And the best cultures I've seen allow people to be diverse and allow different perspective and allow people to bring that different creativity and allow it to show up in the work that they do. But from a leadership perspective, I think creativity is really important. If we want to solve those wicked problems, then we're going to need wicked creativity, right? We're going to need much more creative thinking, much more diverse ways of looking at the world and trying to solve those problems. So as a leader, I'm not suggesting that you need to be creative yourself, but what I want you to do is figure out and understand what creativity is and how creativity plays its part in solving strategic problems. And The reason why I say that is all of the evidence I have and all of the coaching I've done with leadership teams around the world and all of the leaders that I've worked with who have been super inspirational understand two things. They understand purpose and they understand creativity. And when you combine purpose and creativity, what I found is you breed curiosity. And as a leader, curiosity is really, really important. Because curiosity, or curious people, whether you're a leader or not, curious people are willing to try new stuff. Curiosity by its very nature means I want to find out more about that over there, or I want to investigate what that means. I'm curious about it. When you're curious as a leader, it makes you more open to exploration and more open to the exploration of your people. It makes you more open to experimentation and allowing your people to experiment. And exploration and experimentation, as we know, they're what fuel innovation. So as a leader, start to think about how you can increase how purpose driven you are and increase your comfort and understanding of creativity. When you do that, curiosity will breed the very, very leadership mindset that building a culture of innovation requires. The next thing I want to talk to you about is, and here's a brilliant example of best practice in how to build leadership frameworks. Amazon have what they call their leadership principles, and Amazon is one of the organizations that I've worked with which is genuinely innovation led. And I've put the link on the screen here because you can download and read all about Amazon's leadership principles. There's not as much fidelity as you have when you work with them on the inside. I can share different bits about things, but a lot of what they do they like to keep confidential. But their leadership principles they've published for everyone to read. And just I encourage you to go onto their site and download their leadership principles and see which resonate with you as an organization and how you need to do things and what you know is important to how you want to build a culture of innovation. And as we can see on screen, whether it's customer obsession, whether it's earning trust, whether it's deep diving on everything, all of these are principles that must be lived and breathed on a day-to-day basis by every leader across Amazon. What I want you to concentrate on is one of the ones is trust and ownership, and they're two things that I'm going to talk to you about a little bit more on the next few slides. But I encourage you. It's a brilliant example of best practice, so I encourage you to go and have a look at those. The second thing that I want to talk to you about now in the last 10 minutes that we have is how we enable a culture of innovation. I've explained that leadership is key, but innovation fundamentally is about people. That system that I shared with you at the start is fundamentally all about people. Tools and processes and frameworks and governance, they're what I call assets. They're things that we have to have in the organization. But the other three components of that system were about people, right? Building that strategy needs to be owned by people. Strategy is about vision and about purpose and about a view of how we shape the future. That has to be created by people. The leadership and the culture bit is all about people. When you combine that together, we can simplify what innovation is and how we get it. Innovation is fundamentally driven by people. Moreover than tools and processes, if we don't have people and culture, then innovation dies. So we need to build a culture where innovation becomes a measurable driver of how we shape the future, a measurable capability. The first step is understanding what your current level of what we call innovation maturity is. So when I talked about purpose and ambition before, understanding that start point is really important. And the way we do it, the best practice in this is something that I'm one of the global pioneers of, and that's how we measure innovation maturity inside big complex organizations. And there's a link on screen there, and you can visit what we call the tool that we use is something we call AIM, and it stands for the Assessment for Innovation Maturity. Measuring culture is only one part of what you need to do. What we know has to be done is what we call measuring innovation. You have to measure the capability that your organization has. So are all the components that innovation requires in place, whether that's strategy, tools, frameworks, governance, budget, etc., etc. And then how embedded are all those components across the organization? Because having tools and assets and frameworks and budget is great, but if they're not known about, if they're not understood and they're not used, then your capability won't scale across the organization. So have all the things in place. Is leadership the right leadership behavior there? Is the right management behavior there? Are all the assets in place? And then how widely understood and how widely used are they across the organization? The combination of those is what you must measure. And that's what we call innovation maturity. Measuring culture alone isn't good enough. That's not best practice. Culture for me fundamentally is about collaboration, and the backbone of innovation is about collaboration. I don't need to tell you all that when putting innovation teams together, when working on challenges, we must build diverse teams. We must collaborate really, really well inside our organization, because the more complex and the more wicked those problems get, we're going to have to start collaborating much, much more, much wider outside our organization. The best organizations in the world, so organizations like Siemens, for example, have incredible external ecosystem. Organizations like BASF have incredible external innovation ecosystems. There are best practice around the world of organizations that collaborate externally incredibly well. But in order for them to do that, they've had to figure out how to collaborate really well inside. The last final things I want to talk to you about are some of the softer things around innovation culture, but arguably from a leadership perspective and a people's perspective, they're really important. One of the core values, I believe, is crucial and is so overlooked in organizations, because it's, and especially for the men out there, for the male species, the word love is something that traditionally we're uncomfortable with. I'm not, because as a leader, I think love in an organization is really, really important. It's crucial for innovation. And what I mean by love is, do all our people, and as a leader, are you confident that do all our people absolutely love what we do? Do they love coming to work? Do they love what we do and how we do it every day that they turn up to work? Do they love the fact that we are purpose driven, and are they absolutely engaged with it? Building an environment like that, not necessarily using the word love every day, but using the core concept of people loving what we do, loving how we do it, and loving why we do it, is really important. If people don't love what we do, if they don't buy into what we're trying to achieve, you will not get innovation. Innovation, as we know, requires creativity. And I call creativity the willing contribution. And what I mean by that is, we can contractually make employees do their job to a certain standard. We can physically have that in their employment contract. What we can't make people do is give us their ideas, is give us their creativity, is give us their passion. Building an environment and a culture where people absolutely love what we do because we're doing things that make a difference is really important. I'll give you a really, really binary example, and this is probably the most highest example of best practice about this kind of topic that I have. If you look at all of the special forces teams around the world, and I've worked with some of them, one of the things that they really focus on in special forces, whether that's the British special forces, whether it's the US Navy SEALs, they focus on one core thing. We would all think that they focus on capability and your ability as a soldier to do your job. What's more important to Navy SEALs is trust. And you only build trust when you build an organization and a culture where people believe in leadership, they believe in the mission and the purpose, and they absolutely believe in what you're doing and why you're doing it. One of the other core components of leadership in Special Forces is also the attention to the word caring. They care about people, which is counterintuitive to what you would expect. So just think about one of the world's, if not the world's most high performing team, the most high performing team on the planet has two core things from a leadership perspective. They focus on caring and they focus on trust. And if you can do the same, you will build an environment where innovation becomes a core natural capability. The final thing I want to share with you is the fact that as leaders, we need to take responsibility and we need to own the innovation agenda. And I'm going to share with you what I mean by owning the innovation agenda. This is something I want you to take away with you back into the organization and really understand how to embed this in your organization. We build innovation maturity and we build innovation culture by doing three things at different levels of the organization. As a leader, as an executive, what I want you to do is figure out what you need to do as an individual and as a team to genuinely own the innovation agenda. So what does real ownership of the whole innovation agenda look like? And on a day-to-day basis, does every one of the people that work for you, do they look at you and say, yep, Chris absolutely owns the innovation agenda, complete responsibility, complete accountability, complete ownership. And he makes sure that we as an organization have everything we need, whether it's tools, processes, culture, budget. He makes sure that we have an environment where innovation is right at the center. And that thing needs three things. It needs physical assets, mental capability and behavior and mindset, and psychological safety. Then if you're a manager in the organization, I want you to figure out, and I want you to work with your leadership team and your executive to figure out, how do you drive the innovation agenda on a day-to-day basis? How do you bring innovation alive from the center of the organization? What physical assets do you need? What mindset and behavior and skills do you need? And what does psychological safety mean to you? What is a safe environment for you to be able to do that? And then for all of the non-managerial people in the organization, we need to figure out, how do we enable them to contribute to the innovation agenda? Innovation is not everyone's job. If we appraise everyone at the end of the year and we do everyone's annual review and we have in there a category that forces them to tell us or demonstrate how they have innovated, the majority of people will fail that question, will fail that part of their appraisal. Not everyone in an organization will be able to innovate, but what everyone can do is contribute to the innovation agenda in multiple different ways. So we've got to figure out how we enable everyone in the organization to contribute to innovation. What do they physically need? What mindset, skills, and capabilities do they need? And what does psychological safety mean to them at their level? And if we can build that as leaders, that to me is an example of the best way. That's best practice in building a culture of innovation and building innovation maturity. There's a slide, I've slightly run out of time, but there's a slide here which gives you some really good examples of why every culture in different organizations is different, and why you shouldn't just look at another organization and say, let's copy what they did. I should have mentioned at the start that we'll share these slides, so please read this one, because I've unpacked some examples of brilliant cultures around the world, but what makes those cultures different, from leadership to creativity to customer centricity to psychological safety, and what core learning you can gain in order to look at some of the best practice for innovation cultures around the world. I hope you found that really useful. I know we now have some time for questions, but Obviously, my details are on the screen there. If anyone wants to reach out, come directly to me or go back to SIA partners and reach out to them. And between us, we can help answer any questions on your journey to building a culture of innovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent, informative, inspiring, actually, session with you, Professor Chris. Thank you so much. You can see
My
lots
pleasure.
of clapping. I've seen lots of feeling going on, thumbs up, clapping. There were hearts also during the session while you were speaking.
So hearts mean love. So that's great. I like that.
I mean, this is the first time I attend a webinar and there are hearts actually. And at the end, you bring out as one of the core elements to building innovation culture is love. And that's a very new perspective perhaps to us, as well as a very important perspective to look at. Just like a question that popped out, and then there are many others.
Yeah.
Lots of thanks from the team attending the webinar. One of them saying innovation might lead to termination of people. So termination, like you get kicked out from your job. So what's your perspective on that? What's missing in that culture?
Well, I think so. There's lots. I think that question predominantly centers around technology, and there's been lots of conversations around, innovation predominantly is about, or is usually seen or talked about in terms of new technology. And when employees think, well, automation, new technology, increased efficiency, well, the natural conclusion is that means, oh, well, they won't need as many people because the robots will do our job. And I think the answer to it is society and the world and organizations are just shifting the way that we operate. But what we're doing at the same time as bringing in technology to make our organizations more efficient, what we should look at and what people should look at is not that means they will then be made redundant or lose their jobs, but that their jobs will actually just shift in perspective. What robots and what technology and what efficiency things can't do is replace the human component of what we do as people, as employees. And what I'm actually seeing is not that technology and innovation is replacing people, but it's replacing the tasks that we shouldn't be getting people to do because they're repetitive, or the tasks that technology can do better. And what that's freeing people up to do is to do the stuff that only humans can still do at the moment. Customer centricity, empathy, creativity, solving those problems. So I'd encourage people not to be negative about innovation and technology, but to think about it in a positive way, that actually done in the right way and utilized in the right way, it can actually make people's jobs even better and more creative and humanize the workplace, and allow people to do what they really should be good at, which is the stuff that technology can't do.
Sure. Another question is about, you mentioned wicked problems that, we need to deal with, complex problems that we need to deal with every day. The person who asked the question, he says, how to deal with wicked people who are against innovation or innovative changes, who, hinder innovation from happening?
Yeah, that is a difficult one. So the reality of an organizational culture is organizational cultures will always be the average of everyone in an organization. And so there will always be people that are super passionate about innovation, and there will always be people that are negative about innovation, that maybe want the way that we work to stay the same, or and they don't want change, etc. What we have to do with a culture of innovation is seek out and find the people that are positive and spend time with those people. And my experience has shown the more you show the benefits of innovation and the more you demonstrate and show examples of innovation and how it's benefited the organization and how it's changed and how it's solved problems, the more people tend to side with actually, yeah, innovation is something we should focus on. And all you want to do is tip the balance of the percentage of people that are positive towards the percentage of people that are negative. And in any organizational culture, the more you can tip that balance, it sort of doesn't matter that there are negative people in the organization, as long as there are more people that are positive about, excuse me, as long as there are more people that are positive about the innovation agenda. We live in a diverse society, and we will never ever get an organization where 100% of everyone in the organization is absolutely positive and super enthusiastic about innovation. It's just not how the world works. So seek out the ones that are positive and spend time with those people.
Psychological safety, another question. Could you elaborate on it?
Yeah, so psychological safety is really, really important. And one of the best examples is, and I shared it on that slide, I just didn't have enough time to cover the detail on that slide. But as I said, you know, I'll send you a PDF of the slides and everyone can have them and they can read that slide in more detail. There's an example on there of psychological safety, and the best example in terms of organization I've worked with is Microsoft. And psychological, so Microsoft, when Satya Nadella started at Microsoft in 2014, it came off the back of Steve Ballmer and a really, really bad period in Microsoft's history. So a decade of really poor performance. And fundamentally, it was down to leadership and poor psychological safety. When Satya Nadella started in 2014, he started a complete cultural change program and a leadership development program centered around growth mindset. And one of the core things that he focused on was psychological safety. And what that means is the organization safe for an individual or a team, but in essence, at an individual level, is it safe for me as an individual in your organization to challenge the status quo? Is it safe for me to voice an opinion that might be controversial in terms of whether I think something will work or not? Is it safe for me to take some risk? So is it safe for me to actually do the things that fundamentally innovation requires? But if we take innovation off the table and just talk about the environment that I work in inside an organization like yours, is it safe for me to do it? Am I going to be chastised? Am I going to be publicly ridiculed? Am I going to be negatively thought of at my annual appraisal? You know, are my colleagues going to, you know, am I going to be chastised by my boss, by my leader, for voicing an opinion or challenging the way that we do things? That's what psychological safety is about. Now, if we have that in an organization, we have an organization where people are confident and not afraid to speak their mind, to share opinion, and in some instances, they're confident to criticize, albeit positive criticism, so constructive criticism, but people are open to sharing ideas and taking some risk and challenging the status quo and pushing the boundaries on what they think is possible. That's how important psychological safety is. And it's one of the, if there's one of the things that I do when I coach senior teams, one of the most important things is that psychological safety component.
Sure. I would like to open the floor, and we have less than 2 minutes, perhaps, guys. Apologies. There are lots of questions and praise and admiration coming on the chat. I'm trying to follow up on that. If someone would like to jump in with a question, please.
Just before someone jumps in, what I will say is, if there are any questions that people want answering, we can give my email address out. If people want to email me a question or send me a question on LinkedIn, if they don't want to voice it on here, then I'll respond personally to them, and I'll do that privately, so it's one-on-one. So I know we haven't got a huge amount of time and there'll be a million questions, but I will answer them after this session or over the next week or so. If people want to contact me, that's fine. We have 2 hands up.
Yeah. take a question or two because from time standpoint, we are done with the session. Please, who's ready with a question?
Can they unmute their microphones themselves?
Oh, that's another point.
Yes, Chris.
We're
Should
working on
I
that.
should I enable microphone?
Yes, please.
To...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yes,
for, I
please.
mean, I'm okay for time. So if you're okay, then I'll take some more questions. But yeah,
Just a
please,
moment,
please.
please. Let me do it through the system.
While we're working on the mics, lots of
Yeah.
question about, what comes first, for example, the processes and all the governance and all of that, or we can do with the innovation culture without having those in place. Lots of questions about legal firm and how innovation culture can work there. People are asking specific, questions based on their
let-
industry.
Good morning. Can I ask a question? Now we are unmuted finally.
Who do we have?
This is Hanan Al-Mheri. I work in the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority.
Hi, Hannah.
Mr. Chris, thank you so much for this session, and Dr. Aisha also thank you so much for facilitating just such an engaging session. It was really great to be in this session today. Actually, I did my PhD recently on investigating the impact of organizational culture and leadership on knowledge sharing behavioral intentions. And what I found out is that, as you said, leadership has a huge impact because the leadership is the driver for any change. So for example, our culture, of course, will affect knowledge sharing behavior and innovation and all of that. But again, the culture, the leadership will drive the culture and also their behavior. So it is really amazing. But there is one point that you have mentioned at the early in the session, which really struck me, is that you mentioned that about the strategy. When we do the strategy, okay, we have this common exercise, traditional exercise, that we have to do our strategy for the next 10 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever. Okay, I think it's a good exercise, at least for us to have a plan ahead. But as you said, it's very traditional, and while we are doing this, we need to be also agile. Like we need to adapt on the, because for example, I'm doing the plan in 2022, but I don't know what can arise. Like for example, Corona and the pandemic, we didn't know about it.
Exactly.
So we had to be agile and we had to adjust and everything. And another thing also, like I think as a manager, like I face it as a challenge, is that also I think HR, human resources practices should change. Being the example, okay, I sit with my employees at the beginning of the year, we agree on set of objectives, and again, sometimes the leaders, they get a new requirement which are more innovative, because again they want to be following the flow of the trends and everything. But I feel as a manager I am put in a very awkward and weird position. I cannot give them more objectives, yet again I cannot change the objectives that we have agreed on. And I feel like there is no a holistic system that can support everything. So I don't know, like, what is your remarks on that? Thank you so much.
No problem. So two things. The way that we have to approach strategy now, as I explained, it is absolutely right. So still build your view of where you want the organization to get to in 5, 10, 15 years time. That future vision doesn't need to change, right? That's your ambition and your view of the future state that you're where you want to get the organization to. The difference is how we used to do strategy is we would say it's 2022. We're going to build a strategy for the next 5 years. And on Monday, we start to implement the strategy. And we now, for 4 or 5 years, we don't deviate from that because that's the plan we've agreed. What we now teach you how to do is you still build the future vision. But what we then say is from today, knowing everything we know about the world and the organization and society and technology, how far ahead could we, like, honestly, confidently predict the world won't change enough that will affect our strategy, and we then push towards that time frame. But we're constantly then, as we start to, let's say that's 12 months, as we start to approach 12 months, we're reviewing the world again, and we're reviewing technology, and it might mean that we never, it's the same as satellite navigation system. If you're going from point A to point B, if there's a roadblock or a crash, your satellite navigation system just reroutes you round it, but it then gets you back on track. That's how we have to look at strategy, and we have to be agile enough to be able to do that. But there are some ways of doing that that are very different to common strategy implementation. The question about HR is really important. We wrote a whole chapter in the book just about HR. And if we want to build innovation as a system and as a core component of culture, HR needs to be part of that innovation strategy. So when I talk about innovation strategy, I don't just mean we are going to pursue these types of opportunities in this space. I'm talking about there needs to be part of the strategy that says, here's where we're going to innovate and here's what we want to achieve, but here's how we're going to achieve it. And how we're going to achieve it means cultural change. If it means cultural change, here's our HR strategy for how we embed innovation into the day-to-day of the organization. And that will mean policies, appraisals, frameworks, all will have to change over time. This isn't done in a few months. It's a long-term journey. But HR need to have a seat at the table, and they need to contribute to your innovation strategy.
Perfect, Dr. Chris. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Hanan, for an amazing question. We need days and days and weeks to cover this topic. It's very important. Everybody is excited about it. Please provide your questions offline to Professor. I think he will be generous enough to reply to it.
I will do, yeah.
On behalf of all my colleagues, Dubai Excellence, DGEP, I would like to, as a host for this session, to thank you, Professor, for your generous application of all the information, responding to our inquiries, and we hope to meet you again. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a lovely day.
Dr. Aisha, you've been a great moderator. Thank you very much. And just to remind everyone, I will send a PDF of all the slides so that everyone can request that, or it can be sent to everyone. And then if you do have questions, just reach out to me and I'll answer them privately.
Perfect.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.